just to be open about this little point, and that is, are we talking about collaboration or coordination, or collective impact for that matter? I think when collective impact term became very popular in 2011 or 2010 or so, I felt that everybody was moving towards collective impact. And not everything needs a collective impact. And it's okay if it's just coordination, if it's a cooperation, and definitely if it's collaboration. So Chris Lipp and Larson from 1994 put out this definition of collaboration, or this statement, that it's to create a shared vision and joint strategies to address concerns that go beyond the purview of any particular party. So that definitely goes back to what Katie was talking about with the shared vision and building that movement and reciprocity. So for example, we recently worked with a group of organizations working on green infrastructure in a neighborhood. And they came around, they approached us, I should say, because they wanted to align all of the plans that were present in that neighborhood. And their idea was, we want to align these plans because there's just a ton going on and not everybody knows what all these other organizations are doing. And then we also want to move towards collective impact and develop some indicators and figure out how we were going to measure our results. So we established a strong action team, which was the greater group, and then a smaller core team that met in between those meetings to organize and to get ready. They created a shared vision. We took a look at all the plans. There was over 30 plans for this neighborhood from different levels of government and community. And then we started looking at the indicators and the results and realized, you know, we're not quite there. We want to focus on these plans and then come back to data and indicators at a later date. And I think that was a really healthy decision. And in speaking to healthy collaboratives across the country, many times people are in this formative stage for up to 6 years, 7 years. And so taking the time to really figure out, have we moved to the level of collaboration or collective impact, or are we just where we need to be? Next slide, please. All right, so the research that we have out there and some features of highly successful collaboratives come from a local researcher named Darren Hicks, who has quite a few other researchers in on this article at the bottom of the screen, The Influence of Collaboration on Program Outcomes, the Colorado Nurse Family Partnership. And he has really boiled down a lot of research. It's worth reading that article for sure. And has come up with 2 indicators of a successful collaborative. And number 1 is strong process leadership. And number 2 is an open and credible process. The strong process leadership is about bringing appropriate people to the table and keeping them there through difficult periods, because there will be difficult periods. And the key is facilitating all of your diverse points of view in a manner that represents and respects differences, but yet all the stakeholders feel like they can stay competent and trusted and valued throughout the process. Most people come to the table with an agenda from their organization. And the balance here is ensuring that they will get and be able to give something that will benefit their organization or their community and the greater good. The second piece is the open and credible process. And this again goes back to SCARF. People need to perceive that they are all treated equally, and of course, not just perceive, but actually be treated equally, and secure that decisions have not been made in advance, with the process simply serving as a legitimation for those decisions. They actually see the process as more fair, even if the outcome is different than what they wanted, if they have an opportunity to influence the process before decisions are made. So often it's not about winning their point or defending their stance, but it's more that the entire process was very transparent, that voices were included at appropriate times, that questions when they were asked were given weight the same as anybody else, regardless of status around the table. I wish we could have time for some questions. Let me just see if there's any questions. I don't see any on the chat, but feel free to jump in at any point if you have questions about what we're talking about. And again, that is from Darren Hicks, who is actually at the University of Denver. So how do we begin to develop those groups so that we can have that highly successful collaborative? And Katie, if you don't mind moving to the next slide. Engagement and recruitment. And this, in my experience, is happening all the time in a collaboration. It's not a one-time thing by any means. And it's important that it's done in a way that is super thoughtful and intentional. And I'd like to go back to the same example I talked about before with the group that was doing a plan alignment and thought they would move towards collective impact, and in the end decided that it wasn't the right time. But that group began with this new work by doing something that we call discovery. And that discovery process identified, X number, 8 to 10, 12 to 15, different stakeholders that should be consulted and looked at for wisdom in building the group and learning about the context of the situation. But what we did in this process was that in addition to asking those questions, like what would you like to see happen out of this collaboration or collective impact, what's important to you, what do we need to know? In addition to those kind of very basic open-ended questions, we also got a sense for who might be interested at different levels of the structure that was being designed for this collaboration. So the core group came together as a smaller subset, but the door was open for other people to join. Their role was mostly to plan in between meetings, and they were very intent on doing a lot of the thought and research and moving the ball forward in between the larger action team meetings. But they remained open to people joining the core, mostly at the beginning. But that feeling like this is an open group, come join us, was always there. And it was safe to say that after the first 1 or 2 meetings, it did not expand, but it expanded nicely before then. And then the action team was a larger group. It also remained open throughout the process and had a very welcoming feel. People appreciated all the work that the core group did to make sure that work was moving forward. And there was representation from nonprofits, government, community, universities, businesses. And this group was focused on green infrastructure. But the diversity that they had at the table at both the core group and the action team meeting was really inspirational. They managed to bring in the work that was happening at the community level, the work that was happening at the university level, to kind of the more usual partners at the table, which would be community, government, and the businesses in the neighborhood. The final group is community. And this is where this group also really shined. You can imagine with the number of plans, as I mentioned earlier, in this neighborhood, there was over 30, that there had been a lot of engagement of the community. And they had been asked over and over, how would you like to see this neighborhood transformed? Tell us what your vision is for an amazing neighborhood. Tell us what your concerns are. When it came time to form this part of their work, they were very clear that they were not going to reach out to community in a kind of open-ended, come one, come all manner. because of that reason, they felt like they had been asked a lot and that they needed to see action on the previous input that had been supplied through all the development of the plans. So we had 1 or 2 representatives. One came occasionally to the core group, but there was always community representation by 1 or 2 people on the action team. And when we did the discovery process for this group, everybody that we talked to said, oh, we need to make sure and engage the community. And then we would explain that is super important, but at this point in the process, we're not doing the come one, come all. It's very concerted, very thoughtful engagement. And I think by having those discovery interviews, we all got on the same page with what community was going to look like in this phase of the project and who would be attending. Now, when we finished that phase of the project, then the group felt like, okay, we've done this work. We've aligned the plans. We're moving forward with, X, Y, and Z plans. We do need to go back now and engage the community and see kind of where they're at with the work that's been happening.